I thought my life was over. The moment two men in police uniforms slammed on my front door, yelling that I had to pack my bags and leave the neighborhood forever. They looked official enough, badges, clipboards, even fake warrants, and for a split second I actually believed it. But when my wife Beverly stepped out holding her FBI credentials, everything flipped, and the people who thought they were hunting me suddenly realized they'd just become prey. 4 months before that nightmare scene, I was just Jeffrey Green, 42 years old, an insurance claims investigator who thought he'd finally landed the dream life. I had a decent career, a beautiful wife who worked for the FBI, and a house in a quiet suburb with manicured lawns and smiling neighbors. At least that's what I thought. The real storm started the moment I crossed paths with Cynthia King, our HOA president. At first, Cynthia came off like the perfect neighborhood mom, organizing block parties, waving to everyone, reminding folks about lawn care. But something about her smile always felt a little predatory. Within days, she started camping outside my property with professional-grade cameras and surveying equipment. She wasn't just checking for compliance, she was documenting my grass height with rulers, snapping time-stamped shots, keeping logs that looked like FBI case files. My gut screamed this wasn't normal. Then came the fines. $50 here, $75 there. Grass, 0.3 inches too tall. Mailbox slightly tilted. Decorative clutter. Each one nitpicky, technically correct, but aimed squarely at me. By the end of the first month, I was staring at over $800 in penalties and daily interest that made it feel like a trap. And Cynthia's smile grew wider every time she handed me another notice. Of course she didn't work alone. Robert Thompson, a retired police sergeant turned HOA enforcer, delivered citations like he was serving search warrants. He stood on my porch with that law and order presence making me feel guilty even when I knew I wasn't. Every interaction felt like an interrogation, and slowly neighbors who once waved started crossing the street when they saw me. Cynthia was spreading whispers. Jeffrey doesn't respect community standards. Jeffrey's wife might be spying on us. The isolation hit harder than the fines. The only neighbor who didn't turn his back was Michael Rodriguez, an electrician 3 houses down. He'd stop by, shake his head, and warn me about things Cynthia was plotting when she'd held meetings what she asked the mailman about my package deliveries. At first I was grateful. Later I wondered how he knew so much. By month 4, I was drowning over $1,800 in fines, neighbors avoiding me and Cynthia escalating her game. Anonymous notes showed up on my windshield. Community safety measures may become necessary. Non-compliance has consequences. Subtle enough to dodge the law, clear enough to make me fear for my family. That's when the doubts set in. I'd come home exhausted, stare at Beverly, and wonder if maybe she knew more than she let on. She kept asking me oddly technical questions about chain of custody and admissible evidence. Helpful, sure, but too precise, too. Calculated. There were nights I thought about selling the house, just walking away. I felt broken, like maybe I was the crazy one. And that's the part that still makes me angry, because Cynthia knew exactly how to make me doubt myself. But then cracks started showing in her game. One of those anonymous flyers had a watermark that matched the printer in Cynthia's home office. My investigator instincts went into overdrive. Digging deeper, I uncovered property records showing my house sat on the site of an old chemical plant, soil contamination, benzene, trichloroethylene. Cleanup costs $500,000 minimum. Suddenly it all made sense. Cynthia didn't just want to make my life miserable. She wanted me broke, desperate, ready to sell cheap so she could scoop up the property through her shell companies before the contamination became public. And Robert, turns out, he wasn't just the muscle. Financial records tied him and Cynthia together, shared bank accounts, joint investments. This wasn't HOA enforcement. It was a racket. One night, sitting in the dark kitchen with stacks of evidence in front of me, I looked at Beverly and asked straight out if she was involved. She didn't flinch. She just smiled that knowing smile and said, "Keep documenting. Don't stop." That's when the light bulb clicked. She wasn't just my wife asking casual questions. She was building a federal case. My paranoia, my doubts, even my snooping on her files. She had counted on it. She needed Cynthia to think I was isolated, broken, alone. It was all bait. And then came the day of the fake cops. It was a Saturday morning and I was sipping coffee when the pounding hit the door. Two men in cheap uniforms badges that didn't match any real format handcuffs with the price tag still dangling. They waved fake warrants and barked orders. "You've been voted out by the board pack, your thing's mandatory removal." I almost laughed, but the fear was real. For a moment I thought Cynthia had somehow convinced real law enforcement to exile me from my own home. Neighbors gathered. Cynthia stood across the street, arms crossed, grinning like she'd just won the Super Bowl. Robert was there too, sweating bullets, muttering that this had gone too far. And then the air changed. Beverly stepped out calm as ever, badge in hand, and said 5 words that froze the entire block: FBI. "Identify yourselves, now." The so-called cops went from cocky to terrified in seconds. One dropped his clipboard, the other stammered, eyes darting for an escape route. And just like that, the masks came off, actors in dollar store costumes trying to intimidate me into giving up my home. Local patrol cars rolled in, Beverly took command, and the entire circus turned into a federal crime scene. Cynthia's smile died right there. She scrambled for her phone, trying to delete files, shred papers in her car, but it was too late. The FBI doesn't knock unless they already have enough to bury you. And in that moment, watching her realize her fake authority had vanished, I felt something I hadn't in months: relief. Everything unraveled fast after that. Evidence of unlicensed law practice, financial fraud, contracts with developers, even hidden surveillance cameras she'd used to track families all over the neighborhood. It wasn't just me, she'd been running the same scam in multiple communities, flipping contaminated land while covering up the truth. Robert flipped almost immediately, agreeing to testify against her in exchange for a lighter sentence. But Cynthia, she refused every deal, convinced she could still talk her way out. She ended up with 15 years in federal prison. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Seeing her power vanish in front of the whole community, that was enough. The same neighbors who once avoided me now saw the truth with their own eyes. Cynthia, the queen of control, reduced to a fraud in handcuffs. And here's the lesson I learned through all of it: when bullies hide behind fake authority, the best weapon you can have is the truth and the courage to hold on until it comes out.